So you created, I want to talk about your Altman method because that is
Yeah.
your signature framework. So can you tell us all about that?
Sure, sure. So the Altman method, I basically I break down the body into 4 systems, and this is based off of the framework of functional medicine, but just with an like, more of an added, orthopedic emphasis. So I look at the body as 4 systems: structure, chemistry, the nervous system, and energy. And all of those systems interact with one another. And often, with the majority of patients, one or more of those systems is not functioning properly. And that's what's getting them stuck in this chronic pain state, or this inability to get better or heal from an injury. Sometimes it's structural. Sometimes it's a significant injury, like a large rotator cuff tear. Sometimes it's the nervous system. The nervous system very often is playing a role. So we talked about earlier, like a overemphasized, overstimulated nervous system. So that would be the sympathetic nervous system. So if the sympathetic nervous system is overstimulated, if our heart rate, blood pressure, everything is elevated, our adrenaline's elevated, cortisol's elevated, we are not in a state that's conducive to healing. Meaning that, even if we throw the best possible treatment at a person, if they are in that state, their body is not going to respond well to it. And they're going to get either no outcome, and that's what happens sometimes is people will not heal in response to particular treatments, or at the very least, a poor outcome because their body is not going to accept the stimulus and respond appropriately. So getting the nervous system into the appropriate state where it's more balanced is really essential. And that dovetails into something that a lot of functional medicine doctors talk about, which is sleep. Sleep
Yeah.
is vital for recovery, but also for healing. So if someone is not getting adequate sleep, they're not able to rest and regenerate and repair whatever systems, whatever injuries that they're nursing. And that can play a huge role in terms of the chronicity. So the continued issue that people are dealing with. Obviously, you're not going to have an orthopedic appointment where the orthopedist asks you, "How are you sleeping?"
No.
Because that doesn't really fall in their box. However, that could be a huge part of why someone is not getting better. They could have a chronic spine issue with inflammation, and if they're tossing and turning and their sleep is poor every night, even with the best treatment, that may be enough of a stimulus to prevent them from getting better entirely.
Yeah,
And,
that's a me.
and that's where these things are essential, and you have to look at the body and all of these elements to really make sure that you're not missing something. The other thing I we talk about is chemistry. So chemistry is, the various hormone levels, how the body works. I know, when I looked into it, I did read your book, and
Yeah.
that we you talked about things like the thyroid hormone and, how the body's endocrine system and body works as a whole. And those hormones, and many other endocrine systems are essential in terms of the way they work, because if they're not working properly, if your metabolism is too slow or too fast, that also impairs the healing process. And,
Yeah.
as you alluded to in your book, the general lab work is not always precise or specific enough to pick up on these little discrepancies, these little issues. One of these quotes that was also kind of an aha moment that came up when I was in medical training was, Carl Sagan said, "The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence." So basically, not being able to find something on a specific test doesn't mean that there isn't a problem. It just means that the test is not sensitive or specific enough to determine it or to catch it. And that's sort of how I live my life and how I approach treatment of patients is I meet everyone with open eyes, open arms. I want to hear their story. I want to know what's going on. I look at the medical information, and then I break it down into these systems and I look for what's missing. Like, why is this not working? What could we be missing in terms of this equation, in terms of why they're not getting better?